Emma looked at the phone and frowned. He hung up too quickly, she thought, and he hadn't answered her question. Her husband was deliberately dodging her questions. She hoped that he had good reason for doing so. Welcome back, my friends. I'm still waiting to hear from you because the story is branching out in ways you hadn't anticipated, and I would sincerely like to know what you think. I promise to read every comment and answer accordingly. Now let's get back to the story. It wouldn't do to fall into despair because Earl promised that he would be back in 2 weeks. That's what he said. And then they would continue with their lives. He promised that there would be no more hide and seek with bad guys. She punched her pillow and closed her eyes. A tiny light blinked from red to blue in the bedroom, high above the decorative borders on the wall near the ceiling. Another changed in Noah's room too. Earl felt comforted that his family was safe and sleeping. His fingers flew over the keys of his laptop and he nodded to himself. The house was secure. The following morning, Emma awoke to quiet. She looked at the clock and was surprised that it was past 8 in the morning. Noah was still asleep. How odd. She got out of bed and hurried down the hall to the nursery. He was on his back, staring intently at the Disney character mobile circling above him. Round and round, it was mesmerizing to him. The mobile had a timer on it, but it usually went on if he kicked the base of it. The music was muted, so he was watching with fascination. Emma approached the crib and smiled down at her son. Good morning, little man. I see you've mastered turning on the mobile. What else can you do? Are you developing superpowers like your dad? He called last night, but you were asleep. He asked me to give you a kiss for him. I suppose I can do that since you've slept all night, and you've kept yourself occupied after you've awakened. Emma reached down to pick up her son. She kissed his cheek and went to sit to nurse him. Noah's little hand floated in the air as he strove to stroke his mother's face. In the far corner, high in the ceiling, a little red light turned blue, recording the scene Earl would review later. Mentally, Emma went over her day. After filing her grades at the college, she was having lunch with her sister-in-law, Doreen, and then it's to the elementary school to pick up Sam. She had her day mapped out, and if she added more activities, she'll have a full day. No time to think about her husband. It was almost 3 in the morning, Emma's time, before Earl could make the call. He was anxious to speak with Emma. It had been a long day for him. What he found out was disheartening, and he needed a distraction while he sorted through. He found out that the manhunt was going to be difficult, and seeing Sophia again had put him in a bad mood. All the memories had come flooding back. They were very close once, and getting close was the reason he'd left England. It was unprofessional, and it was a mistake. They had been partners for almost a year, and he had been very attracted to her. She had made it very clear that she felt the same, but there had been an edge to her that he hadn't liked. She was quick to try to cover it up, but he noticed. For 3 years, they had been successful in keeping their relationship secret, and they'd relaxed enough to become careless. One fateful evening, everything had come undone. They'd just come off an assignment that hadn't gone very well, and her jealousy had gotten the better of her when Earl had gone out with fellow agents to blow off some steam. He had been dancing with another female agent who was happily married at the time when Sophia joined them. She'd made a spectacle of herself and embarrassed Earl. It had escalated and spilled over into the rest of the evening. They had an awful row, and he had ended their relationship shortly thereafter. Before he left England, however, he had contacted her and they had talked. He left feeling that in time they would become civil, if not friends. "Hello, love. How was your day?" Earl asked when Emma answered. "Hello, detective. It's early day by you. Did you get any sleep?" "My day was okay. I've got Sam, so Noah has a playmate. How are you?" "I'm fine, love. Couldn't sleep much, though. Still trying to get my bearings here. I met up with some old acquaintances and playing catch-up. How did it go with Lynn and Kevin?" "Kevin is thrilled. Apparently he'd guess and is happy. Lynn can't believe how lucky she is." "What old acquaintances?" Emma asked, her interest suddenly piqued. "You are like the proverbial hound dog, love. I have to work with my old partner. It's sort of awkward now. She wasn't too thrilled with me when we ended our relationship." "How very unprofessional of you. I'm beginning to understand that about you." "You were on a case when you got with me, weren't you?" Emma asked. "Yes, and that was because you were so irresistible. I had to have you, and even though you put up a good fight, I got you. Professor, your trust is safe with me. Agent Thorne is just an old acquaintance now. I can be totally objective. You are all I want. Just be careful. And on a lighter note, your son can kick the mobile on now, and every time he does it, He either scares himself or gets the thrill of his life. Is she fat? Emma asked, getting back to the subject at hand. She heard him chuckle. No, she is gorgeous. She is a brunette with sparkling blue eyes, nothing like the beautiful and mesmerizing Hazel of yours. Isn't that a little early for him to be doing? So you've tasted vanilla. You know what they say, once you go black, you never go back. So I'm not worried, and no, he's right where he should be. It's just a trick he's learned. They talked for a little while longer before Earl hung up. Emma was annoyed. She pretended to take it in stride, but that woman was his girlfriend for 3 years. That's enough history to make things difficult. She knew her husband wouldn't allow anything to happen, but she also knew that some women didn't let go that easily. She could be a problem. Didn't he find her rings in his shirt pocket yet? Earl tapped a few keys on his laptop, and almost immediately, his wife and children appeared on the screen. First, he reviewed the footage of Lynn and Emma teasing each other, and then he watched Sam interact with Noah. He quickly clicked it off. It was making him homesick. The assignment was bothering him. Sir Winthrop activated him precisely because they needed fresh eyes. One of their own had gone bad, and he was needed to point out the bad egg. Sir Winthrop had suspected the possibility for some time. It wasn't any one thing that caught one's attention. It was a series of things. Sir Winthrop was ever vigilant. He had Earl spend time with various operatives to see if he could get a vibe. Earl wasn't sure, but he had a hunch. He needed to think it through before he said anything. He'd only been in England a few days, but he'd already gotten an idea who the double agent might be. Sir Winthrop was expecting him to report to him soon, and he didn't know what to say yet. Sophia was due to pick him up, and he didn't dare talk to her about it. He intended to speak with her about their stint with Scotland Yard, just to see if she knew anything that would shed some light on the summit. They had a job to do, and he needed someone he could count on. Earl found out that things had gotten even more serious with the security detail. Another seemingly innocuous incident occurred earlier that morning. This time it was the Prime Minister's car. So now an agent and an investigator from Scotland Yard were assigned to drive the PM around. After reporting to Sir Winthrop immediately after the incident, Earl and Sophia arranged to meet with the rest of the security personnel the following morning. Earl was beginning to feel apprehensive about the way things were happening, slow and sneaky, almost as if the incidents were just a diversion. And he also was beginning to wonder if he would regret accepting the assignment. Sir Winthrop had been very persuasive at first, and he'd reminded Earl that he was still an operative of the Crown. Earl had been the only person left he could trust. Subsequently, agents were scrambled and unscrambled to no avail. They seemed to be a step behind every time, which explained the bug they'd found. So Earl was to be a neutral agent, keeping his eyes and ears open, a spy among spies, as it were. Sophia was overly polite when they met his third morning in England. Earl drove to meet her at a pub near her flat. She asked about his welfare and if he'd slept well. She suggested they have breakfast before meeting with the security detail at the Parliament building. Well, isn't this nice? Reminds me of old times. We used to have breakfast before going into the office all the time. Do you remember? Asked Sophia. We had to eat, Earl answered, not at all wanting to remember. This morning, we're meeting with the security personnel from Scotland Yard. The PM wants to reschedule the conference for another go. Once security gets up to par, he will schedule a date, Sophia said. What happened the other time? Earl wanted to know. Sir Winthrop told him, but he wanted to know how much Sophia knew to get another perspective on the situation. The Prime Minister had called a conference with several other heads of state from all over Europe. Rumor had it that the PM and some others had come up with a proposal that would be a solution for what was happening in the Middle East. There was an attempt to prevent the meeting from happening, and security was beefed up. But little things started happening. The Bureau was called in, and along with Scotland Yard, a plan was put in place. Sophia shrugged. We didn't get much information as to what the conference's agenda was. What was obvious was that the people scheduled to attend were all important people. I believe that someone attending is a target, and it falls to us to keep whomever it is from harm. So you don't think the PM is the target? He asked her. He could be, but I think it's really the meeting itself that's the target. You might be right. We'll know what come morning. He pointed to her plate. Are you done? Oh yes, thank you. Earl led the way out of the pub and stepped out onto the street. London was bustling this time of day, with people hurrying for their places of business. Oddly enough, it felt good to be on British soil again. It had taken Earl a long time to acclimate when he had first moved to the States. He had to keep reminding himself that it was the Americans that had an accent, not him. Now that he was where everyone sounded the same again, it was rather comforting. He took a deep breath and followed Sophia to her car. He decided to ride with her and leave his rental parked at the pub. He sat in the passenger seat and stared out the window. The sky was overcast and it looked like it might rain. He turned to look in the back seat and smiled to himself. Sophia had always kept an umbrella on the seat, and there it was. Some things never changed. Sophia drove expertly along Whitehall to Parliament Square. Earl realized then that his hotel was less than a mile away from the Parliament buildings. They were greeted by the inspector from Scotland Yard who was in charge. He was very formal. Agents Solano and Thorne, I presume. Good morning. I'm Inspector Leonard, Scotland Yard, he said. He held his hand out to shake hands. The inspector handed them each a folder containing floor plans for the meeting rooms upstairs. The PM wasn't in the building at the moment, so it was understood that they conclude their business quickly, as he was expected to be in attendance sometime during the day. Earl scanned the plans and noted that there were entirely too many windows in the room. He asked why the meeting couldn't be held in one with fewer windows. The inspector told him that the PM requested the biggest room to accommodate their guests. Earl asked what measures were in place to secure danger from the windows. Agent Solano, you can rest assured that everyone in the room will be protected within and without. We've got every angle covered. The buildings surrounding this one do not have windows level with this room, nor could there be anyone on the rooftops lying in wait to cause mischief. Earl almost laughed out loud. The inspector sounded so sure of himself. Cause mischief, he said. The British never sounded rattled, he realized. What he's seen in the States has prepared him for whatever was going to happen. Keeping the PM and company safe was the least of their problems. Earl's job was to make sure that nothing went wrong with the meeting again. He was beginning to understand that his quarry was responsible for the trouble at Parliament. By noon, Earl was bored out of his mind. My God, was he that uptight too when he first arrived in America? He missed his partner, Paul. If he were here, he'd have found a way to make him laugh by now. These meetings were dull, and before long, he had totally shut them out. Oh, his ears picked up what was important, but for the most part, he shut them out. When they broke for lunch, Earl was grateful. He declined Sophia's invitation to lunch with her. He took a cab back to his car and drove back to Westminster and parked as close to the Parliament buildings as he could. During the break, he explored the area. Most of the buildings along the strip were guarded. He didn't see how danger could lurk outside, so it had to be on the inside. With Big Ben as a backdrop, Earl walked around. He pulled out the floor plans and studied it more closely. The room was circular and fanned out, comfortably seat 100 or more. He entered the building and headed for the elevator. The office security was using was small and had only one window. They were still at it. Inspector Leonard acknowledged him with a nod as Earl took his seat. Sophia wasn't back yet, and he wondered why Sir Winthrop partnered him with her. Did he think it was a joke? Sophia entered the room and made a beeline for him. She sat beside him and leaned over. What did I miss? She asked. Not much. The inspector is wrapping up the plans to secure the conference. He is going to let the PM know that we're ready. Sophia lifted a perfectly arched eyebrow. Really? Good, because I was bored out of my mind. Shall we go say our goodbyes? Outside, Earl nodded to Sophia and walked to his car. He drove to Chelsea to meet with Sir Winthrop. He was ushered immediately to his office. He took the seat offered and waited. Sir Winthrop's home office was large and airy, not at all stuffy as his title suggests. It was decorated in muted shades of blue, and he had lively portraits of his family on the walls. He proudly displayed pictures of his grandchildren on his desk. I was wondering if you had any ideas yet. Of course, I would understand if you didn't want to speak out of turn until you were sure. I do have some suspicions, but I'm not completely sure yet. Sophia and I were at Parliament this morning and met with Inspector Leonard. He and his team are confident that security is ready. I went over the floor plans and cannot find anything out of order. If anything is to happen during the conference, I surmise that the person or persons will either enter at the beginning when there will be people getting to their seats. The other opportunity will be at the scheduled break, where again people will be milling about, socializing, Earl said, gesturing with his hand. Sir Winthrop nodded and jotted down some notes. Then he smiled and asked Earl about his family. Earl relaxed and brought him up to date. He pulled out his wallet to show off his wife and son. Sir Winthrop got serious again. He opened a drawer at his desk and pulled out a large manila envelope. He told him he could look it over at his leisure. Earl declined staying for dinner and left. As he drove back to his hotel, he thought about his decision to retire. He told Sir Winthrop that only his partner Paul, his father and his wife knew that he was an agent. Paul had insisted that he knew he was more than just a cop from England. It had been apparent when Emma was kidnapped. "So, dude, have you caught your bad guy yet?" Paul asked when Earl called to check in. "No, I haven't been exposed to anyone long enough yet to make a determination. I'm working a cover case with my old partner, as security detail for the Prime Minister. Tomorrow I meet with the other agents who are out on assignments. I'll have a better picture after that." "That sounds like fascinating stuff, man, really. I thought it would be more exciting like in the James Bond movies. Sounds like the same old politics at the police station. Bad cops with good cops rallying together to roust him out. Very uninteresting. Now my friend, had a pretty exciting day today. I followed the leads we decided on and found two possible candidates. One Wilfredo Ortiz and the other an Anthony Arelis. Both are about the right age and both grew up in the area," Paul stated. Just before leaving, Earl and Paul had embarked on a little side work. Earl had talked Paul into helping him find Emma's father. "What can you tell me about them?" asked Earl. Finally something good to think about, he thought. "Mr. Arelis?" Paul pronounced it as Orrelas. "He is a math teacher at the Brooklyn High School, and Mr. Ortiz is a sales manager at a major appliance chain store. I really have a good feeling about those two. I couldn't talk to either of them today, but I have appointments set for later this week." "That is wonderful. I owe you one, big time," Earl replied. "Have you been to see Emma yet?" "I called her this morning. She has Sam and I could hear your son in the background. She sounded fine. The kids are keeping her occupied. I know that I really shouldn't be worried about her, but I can't help it. I know she's changed a lot and seems to have a lot more confidence," Earl said of his wife. "Yeah, she sure has. She is bolder and she carries herself differently. Those self-defense classes are helping. So, do you want me to tell her?" "Not until we're sure. Look, man, I've got to go. I'll talk with you tomorrow." Earl hung up. The envelope Sir Winthrop handed him contained the portfolio he'd helped Earl set up years ago. Earl whistled. He was loaded, as the Americans would say. After helping Sam with homework, Emma allowed her to help with dinner. It had become their routine to pick something out from the cookbook to make for dinner each night. Then after dinner was bath time for both children and then bed. "Mom, I've decided that I want to be a teacher like you. I wanted to be a policewoman like Daddy Earl, but I've changed my mind," Sam said around a yawn. "Why did you change your mind?" Sam yawned again. "Daddy Earl is a very good policeman, but he is never home, and his job is dangerous too. I know he is careful, but sometimes I get scared that he'll get hurt. So that's why I changed my mind. I don't want you to worry about me." Emma hugged her daughter and she didn't know what to say to her. Her husband's job was dangerous, but it was also a necessary job. It kept people safe and prevented bad things from happening. She kissed her daughter again and left the room. She peeked into Noah's room and he was sound asleep. She hurried to her room to await his call, but after the time had passed, he hadn't called. She waited another hour until she fell asleep. He hadn't called. The next day, his full week away, and she hadn't heard from him. Emma began to feel uneasy. She went about her day, doing the things that needed to be done, and that night, after she put the kids to sleep, she went to her bedroom and waited. She had started to watch the British channel that Earl had insisted on when they were subscribing to various channels on their smart TV. She hadn't particularly liked the channel, but she humored him. The international news came on, and the headline caught her attention. She listened intently while her stomach churned. The reporter was commenting on an assassination attempt on the Prime Minister and possibly the other heads of state from all across European Union. The President of the United States was scheduled to speak also. What made Emma's blood run cold was the next thing the reporter said. He said that there had been casualties. 2 men were hurt. They were part of the security team for the conference. They didn't release any information about them other than to say that one was treated and was expected to make a full recovery while the other was in critical condition. Emma sat bolt upright to listen more carefully. The reporter had gone on to something else and said no more about the incident. She watched the entire program until the reporter came back with an update on the condition of the hurt security team members. An inspector from Scotland Yard had sustained a minor gunshot wound and was expected to make a full recovery. No more was said about the other security officer, whose name was Solano, other that his condition was still unknown. Before we continue with the story, tell me in the comments what you're feeling right now. How do you think Emma is feeling? Are you sitting on the edge? If you were in Emma's place, what would you do? Emma had gone numb and hadn't realized that she was rocking back and forth until the telephone jolted her out of it. She quickly reached for the phone. Hello? Emma, it's Jared. I don't know if you've heard the news, but Earl was hurt. He was hurt in the assassination attempt on the Prime Minister, and there wasn't much more said about his condition. I wanted you to know that I am here for you if you need me. Jared's voice was full of concern. Jared, how did you know? I watch a lot of British television, and I caught the news tonight. Are you okay? He asked. I guess we were both watching the same program. I just heard it myself. Jared, I don't know who to contact, but I bet someone will try soon. I don't mean to be rude, but I have to hang up now in case they call. I'll talk with you later. Okay, don't hesitate to call us if you need anything. Promise? Yes, Jared. Goodbye. Emma hung up. The phone dropped into her lap. She hugged herself tightly and waited. Her mind was all jumbled up. She couldn't think. One thought that forced its way through was that Earl was hurt and she couldn't get to him. She was at the mercy of some bureaucrat who would probably think it'd be proper to call in the morning. How was she going to sleep not knowing? Who could she call? Dear God, not another nightmare. Please, she prayed. Her husband had to be all right. By 5 in the morning, Emma had fallen into a stupor of a sleep. 2 hours later, she was awakened by the shrill tone of her phone. It was Jared again. She told him that she hadn't heard from anyone yet and hung up. She got up to check on her children, and they both were still asleep. She was too tired to stay awake, and an hour later, Sam came to let her know that Noah was awake. She went through her day in a fog. Thank goodness Sam had school, and she only had to care for Noah. It was Friday, and she had no plans. After she put her son down for a nap, she entered her bedroom and opened the closet door. Earl had a metal box he kept on the top shelf. She had to get the footstool to reach it. She placed it on the bed and knelt before it. It was locked. Of course it was. She picked it up and shook it. On inspiration, she looked underneath it, and there taped on the bottom was the key. Her hands shook as she peeled the key away to unlock it. She didn't know if she would find anything helpful in the box, but she had to try. There were all papers, all official looking, and she looked through all of them, carefully searching for a telephone number. Something, anything that would help her find someone who could tell her something. At the bottom of the stack of papers was a small black notebook. Her hands shook as she turned to each page. Most of what was written there didn't make sense to her until she read more carefully. It was a list of names. She went through pages of names with body areas written next to the names. It occurred to her that those were the names of people Earl had shot when he worked as a marksman. He'd listed them and where he had shot them and whether they survived or not. At the end of the list, Earl had written how sorry he was and that he had only been doing his job. The man had written apologies to the criminals he'd shot in the line of duty. Even her kidnapper, Raphael's name was on there. He wrote, upper left temple, dead. Finally, at the very bottom of the box, underneath a very nasty-looking gun, Emma found a name that sounded familiar and official. She'd heard him say that name before. She shrugged off the crawling sensation she felt across her skin and eyed the clock and calculated that it was 5 in the afternoon there. She dialed the number and waited. The telephone rang 4 times before a formal introduction of where she had called was spoken. Hello, may I speak with Sir Winthrop? My name is Emma Solano, she said in a clear voice. Madame, Sir Winthrop is unavailable at this time, but if you will leave your telephone number, I will see that he gets the message and return your call. No, please, I'm calling from America. My husband works for him, and I heard that he was hurt. Please let me speak with him, pleaded Emma. Please hold, I will try to get him for you, the voice said. Emma got up to pace. It was at least 15 minutes before another gentleman came on the line. Hello, did you say your name was Solano? Yes, I did. I'm trying to get information. I saw the report on the news that Earl was hurt. Please, I'm calling from America. Can you help me? Ghastly affair, that. I'm sure it was a shock to see that. Am I speaking with his wife or mother? This is his wife, Emma. Can you give me any information or maybe direct me to the hospital he was admitted to? Mrs. Solano, I want to apologize for that alarming broadcast. Your husband was indeed hurt, but he is not critical and doing well. There was a miscommunication with the report, Sir Winthrop said. Oh, thank God. Do you think it will be a problem for me to come see him? If I hurry, I could probably make arrangements and get a flight for tomorrow at the latest. Emma told him in a hurry. She was afraid that the man might talk her out of it. He sounded so reassuring. Mrs. Solano, you don't have to bother with making any arrangements. If you give me a few hours, I can have everything arranged for you. I'm sure with all the worry you're probably doing now, there's bound to be something you'll forget. Give me your number and I will call you with all the details. Thank you so much. She recited her number and hung up. Then she quickly picked up the phone again to call Jared. She told him that her husband was hurt but not critical. She also told him that they were making arrangements for her to go to him. Emma still had her classes to think about and called the emergency number the college had for such occasions. She was surprised how easy it was to get a substitute for the duration of the semester. The semester was almost finished and she had already filed her grades. The next thing she tackled was telling Earl's parents. Thanks to Jared, Doreen already knew and had told them, but she needed to hear a friendly voice right now and called them. Hello, Mom. I know you've heard already, but I wanted to let you know that they're making arrangements for me to go to him. We got the call a few hours ago. I was trying to work up the courage to call you. Are you okay? Asked his mother. Yes, I'm okay, just worried is all. I spoke with his boss, and he assured me that Earl was not critical. I also wanted to ask if you would care for Noah while I'm gone. Emma, dear, you shouldn't even have to ask. Taking care of him will be a pleasure. Go pack, and we'll be over to come for him. Emma hung up and looked around the room that she shared with her husband, who was somewhere hurt in England. She had to remind herself that he wasn't hurt badly. Nevertheless, all she could focus on was that he was hurt. He'd broken his promise to her. He'd promised to come back to her safe and sound. In slow motion, she gathered all that she'd pull out of the box and put them back in and locked it. She placed it back on the top shelf. Tears filled her eyes when her hand fell on a shirt of his. His scent surrounded her and she cried. She packed slowly and methodically. She packed comfortable clothes and thought of all she knew of England. She packed accordingly and planned for at least 2 weeks. Noah seemed to sense that something momentous had happened, and he didn't fuss. When the family came, she wasn't even surprised anymore. They all came. They fussed over her and pressed money into her hands and extracted promises from her to call as soon as she arrived and seen their son and brother. After they left, the phone rang. It was Sir Winthrop. He told her that her ticket would be waiting for her at the departure desk and that someone would be picking her up at the airport. The doorbell chimed and she went to answer it. It was Matt. This was his week to care for Sam. She was immediately alarmed. Is something wrong with Sam? She asked. No, Sam is fine. When I picked her up this afternoon, she said that she left a book she needs for Monday. She said that she left it in her room. Okay, come up to get it. Emma led the way up to Sam's room. They looked but didn't see it. What book did she say it was? Asked Emma. Pinocchio. That one is in my room. She was reading it to me. Matt followed her to the room and stood by the bed. He watched her lean over to grab the book from off the nightstand. It was then he noticed the suitcase. Going somewhere? He asked. Yes, I'm flying to England to meet Earl. Is that right? That man of yours travels a lot, doesn't he? Must be aggravating to be home alone all the time. He reached over to take the book from her. He moved closer and cupped her face. You know, it wasn't until you left that I realized how much I missed you. Even though we had our differences, I never left you alone, Matt said and leaned down to place a kiss on her lips. Startled, Emma pushed him away. Have you lost your mind? You came for Sam's book. Now take it and leave. Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. Matt, please go. She followed him out the room and down the stairs. She shut the door and stood there for minutes, not understanding what just happened. She pushed away from the door and went back upstairs to her room. She laid out what she would wear to the airport and checked her suitcase once more. Then she called her daughter. Recently, Emma had bought her a cell phone. It was for emergencies, but tonight she just needed to hear her voice. They talked for a few minutes and assured her that when she returned from England, she'd bring Daddy Earl back too. It was still too early to sleep, and she felt wired. She headed down to the basement to blow off some steam. Earl's gym had provided hours of exercise time for her. She made a beeline for the punching bag and went at it. 20 minutes later, taking a ragged breath, she swatted at it one last time. She took a scalding shower and dressed for bed. Her flight wasn't until early afternoon, so she needed worry about hurrying out the door at the crack of dawn. At 11 a.m. the next day, the doorbell chimed right when she was pouring herself a cup of coffee. She couldn't stomach anything but toast, and that was her second cup. She opened the door to two white men, dressed in dark suits and ties. They looked very official, and her heart sank down to her stomach. All kinds of scenarios played in her head, especially when they flashed badges at her, badges she didn't recognize right away. She let them in after she finished examining their badges. She stepped away from them and waited for them to give her the bad news. "Mrs. Solano, we are here on Sir Winthrop's behalf. We are to escort you to the airport and to assure you arrive in England safely," one of the men said. They were both British. Emma nodded at them and felt relieved they hadn't bad news for her, but suddenly felt uncomfortable. She recalled her conversation with Sir Winthrop. He did say that he would be sending escorts for her. She turned to the gentleman and smiled. "I hope you don't mind if I verify your identities with Sir Winthrop. So much has happened that I just need to make sure." The men nodded, and one pulled out a phone from his breast pocket. He dialed and waited. Then he stepped away to speak. When he returned, he spoke with his partner, who nodded and looked over at Emma. "Mrs. Solano, it may take us a while to locate someone you can be comfortable with. I apologize for alarming you. So if you'll be patient, someone will come with whom you may feel comfortable, but we have orders to stay with you until he arrives." He had an easy smile on his face, and Emma relaxed just a little. "While we are waiting, would you gentlemen like some coffee?" Emma offered. When she returned with a tray of coffee and pastries, she found the men looking through a photo album. Her in-laws must have left it out in the open the previous evening. "Mrs. Solano, I hope you don't mind. We were curious about your husband. He is a legend, you know. I was privileged to have been present when he was knighted. I was just telling Nigel that your husband was so modest that he hasn't used his title." "Oh, he's modest, all right," Emma replied, her brain reeling. Knighted? If she kept those two talking, she might learn some very interesting things about Earl Solano. By the time the men finished their coffee and pastries, Emma learned that her husband was not only a sir, but that he was the best marksman they'd ever had. He supposedly had ice in his veins when it came to danger. He was a certified genius and a master at strategy. Exactly an hour and a half later, the doorbell chimed and Emma stood up to get it, but Stuart beat her to it. She watched him get the door and then swing it wide open. Emma came up behind him because it was her best friend's husband, Kevin. "Stuart, this is a friend of mine. I'll take it from here," Emma told him. She grabbed Kevin's arm and pulled him in. Agent Stewart tapped Emma on the shoulder and smiled shyly. "Mrs. Solano, this is the person we were waiting for. He'll be taking our place." Emma looked from Stewart to Kevin and then to Nigel. She watched them form a huddle to talk, while her mind was trying to process. "Mrs. Solano, Agent Brooks will be making sure you get to the airport. It was a pleasure to meet the wife of a legend. I sincerely hope Sir Solano makes a complete recovery." They both shook her hand and left. Emma stood there speechless. She couldn't believe it. Her best friend's husband is an agent too? She eyed him warily, and then she shook her head. "Let me guess. Lynn doesn't know, and she is never to know, right? She'll figure it out eventually, but I would be forever in your debt if it isn't right now. If it's any consolation to you, I didn't know about Earl either until about an hour ago," Kevin said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "So, I've been apprised of the situation, and you have a plane to catch. Are you okay?" asked Kevin. "Is that all you have to say? You've been apprised of the situation? Kevin, are they any more surprised left to spring on me? My God, do you have any idea how all of this is affecting me?" Kevin did what he thought Emma needed at the moment. He gave her a hug. Emma froze and then hugged him back. And then she cried. He held her until she cried herself out, and then they talked. He told her how he got started with the agency, and she told him that Earl was a sir. Kevin explained that she had clearance and wouldn't have to go through customs, but warned her that he didn't know how it would be on the other end. Emma ran up to get dressed and came back down with her suitcase, which Kevin took from her. He waited for her to punch in the alarm codes and then into a car that was waiting for them. They both got into the back seat. Besides the driver, there was another man riding up front as well. "Is it all right to speak now, or do we have to ride in silence?" she asked in a stage whisper. "Yes, it's okay. We needed to keep this as professional as possible because I'm being exposed here. We noticed that your neighbors are watching. If I ride in the back with you, it looks like I'm a passenger just like you." "You know a limo isn't very inconspicuous," Emma pointed out. "I know, but you are VIP. Sir Winthrop and company would be very put out if we're to arrive in anything less," Kevin said in his best British accent. Emma giggled and shook her head. "Oh, damn, here it is. I went and forgot my tiara." Being in a limo had its advantages, however. Traffic seemed to part like the Red Sea for them. Before long, they were parking at the airport terminal entrance. Kevin got out and flashed his badge. The other guy up front got out and popped the trunk for her luggage. Flanked by both of them, they were taken aside and she was handed her ticket. Kevin hugged her tightly and wished her luck before she boarded. The man from the limo turned out to be a sky marshal. They were seated next to each other, and they boarded first. He flashed her a lazy grin and scooted down in his seat and closed his eyes. Her flight wasn't direct, and she changed planes in Montreal, Canada. The sky marshal stayed with her while they waited to board their connecting flight. 6 hours and 45 minutes later, they were landing at Heathrow. Earl felt awful. He felt like what was left behind after being run over by a Mack truck a few times. With his right arm in a sling, he couldn't get comfortable. Sophia was trying to be helpful, but Florence Nightingale, she wasn't. After the fiasco at the conference, Earl wasn't in a pleasant mood. He had suspected who the double agent was. It wasn't apparent to him what the tie-in was with the Prime Minister, but he was vigilant. He had suspected, but for the sake of old times, he wanted to be absolutely certain. Scotland Yard had their people fanned out, and they were easy to spot. Earl's people consisted of only Sophia and him. He had positioned himself near the rear door, and once the conference was called to order, he had gone on full alert. Sophia was posted near the front, and they kept in contact by way of the bulky handheld radios Scotland Yard issued them. The conference room easily held 100 people. The heads of state from all over Europe were seated. 20 minutes had gone by and all appeared well. Security moved about freely, and Earl had everyone placed and cataloged in his mind. Every few minutes or so, they changed positions. Sophia moved too, but she moved closer to the front. What was she doing? Did she see something? Earl radioed her, and she nodded to acknowledge him, but didn't respond. It was then that Earl became absolutely sure that Sophia was the double agent. All of the sudden, everything fell into place. It was something she'd said. She said that the target was what the conference was accomplishing. The PM was merely its instrument. With him out of the way, the meeting could be held in limbo indefinitely. Someone wanted the turmoil in the Middle East to continue. To what end, Earl couldn't be sure, but someone was benefiting, and Sir Winthrop suspected her all along. It was why he called him in, the sly fox. Earl watched in horror as Sophia inched forward until she was very nearly at the front of the room. She scrunched down and pretended to pick up something, when in reality, she was handing something to someone seated at the second row. Earl was sure that it was a gun. Her accomplice was a government official. By the time he started for the front, Sophia's man stood up and shot at the Prime Minister. He missed and it looked deliberate. Then pandemonium ensued. Sophia suddenly wasn't there anymore, and the Scotland Yard inspector was shooting. The gunman shot back and struck him in the arm. Earl had finally reached the front when the gunman turned toward him and shot him almost point blank in the right shoulder. Earl had gone down, but he could see Sophia then. She was shouting at her accomplice. It sounded like "kill him." Needless to say that with the crowd of people running in all directions and over him, he lost sight of her and the gunman. By the time someone got to him, Earl had lost a lot of blood, and he was trying not to pass out. Are you freaking out right now? Comment how many of you thought Sophia was the double agent. Comment with a thumbs up if you knew it all along. Earl regained consciousness in the hospital. Apart from the gunshot wound, he'd sustained some bruising from being trampled upon. Sir Winthrop came to him as soon as he was notified. They spoke privately for a few minutes, and Earl confirmed his suspicions. Agent Thorne had her story put together quite nicely when questioned. She saw the gunman acting suspiciously and went to investigate. When she bent down to question him, he had pulled her gun from its holster. She had stepped back when he pointed the gun at her and then was taken completely by surprise when he turned the gun on the PM. Everything happened fast after that, and that it was hard to remember what happened after. Together, they decided to leak out the information that Earl was in critical condition in order to put the double agent at ease. Sir Winthrop wanted results immediately. Who was the agent behind these attacks? He ordered all surveillance footage handed over. They had to wait for Scotland Yard first, but as soon as they got it, they'd be able to launch their own investigation. Sir Winthrop wanted to flush out the scoundrel, as he put it, and bring order back to the Bureau. He then ordered Earl and Sophia to continue to work together. He felt that they were good together and had every confidence that they would put everything to rights once again. It was then that they decided that Earl leave the scene for a day or two. It would give the bad guys a sense of security. Sophia had a perfect place. Of course she did. Earl was transferred to a vacant house Sophia knew of. The conference was scaled down to a meeting via internet conference call and was successfully executed. Just before Earl's transfer from the hospital, Sir Winthrop told him that he'd been in contact with his wife and had sent for her. Sophia jumped at the idea of Earl's wife coming and even volunteered to pick her up from the airport. Now this was a complication he hadn't counted on. Emma's presence was going to put a damper on his activities. It was true that he was hurt, but Sir Winthrop felt that it was better all the way around if Sophia didn't suspect that they were on to her. But to bring Emma all the way out here was a very big risk. Well, that's it for now. Please comment what triggered you the most. I promise to read everyone. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.